Good morning. Good morning. Hello. I'm Melanie Cutlan. I'm a managing director at Accenture, and I lead our tech capabilities for the Metaverse Continuum Business Group. Now, is that a mouthful? It means I lead our XR and blockchain talent as we're thinking about an entire scaled business group to respond to the Metaverse. It has been a journey in emerging tech. I've been in this space for a long time, so I'm excited to talk to you guys a little bit about ledgers and transactions and what that means, but really wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit as well. And I think Royal and Sam did a fantastic job teeing up this overall context, and I'll be around all week to talk about questions and things as we go. But this is a really special moment as you think about the metaverse and what has happened, the explosion of the term, the hype, the is it real, is it not real, as we said in the morning. But 71% of executives state that the metaverse will have a positive impact in their business. 42% of them believe it will be transformative in nature. It is in every, right, so Accenture, if you don't know much about us, we work with Global 2000, I'm talking to Fortune 100 clients almost every single day about what is the metaverse, how do we think about it, and what can they do in this space? And people are ready to act in a very surprising way. I've been in emerging technology for a long time, and it's usually there's a test and learn, there's a get educated, help understand in these movements before there's a commitment to move. There is a really unique thing happening here. Citi says $13 trillion will be in this economy by 2030. That is a huge market. We're hearing companies who say, I missed being an early adopter in the Web 2 movement, so I'm gonna be all in Web 3. What is next, what is coming, and how is my brand gonna show up, and how is it gonna show up differently in these spaces? We're seeing the creation and experience, the ownership models, the socialization that are happening, and the transactions that are flowing. Even though we're in early days, money is changing hands, which is what I think is really interesting of this space. It's like we are at the beginning of the metaverse, but we are years into XR. You guys have been in this space for a long time, I imagine. We've been in the blockchain space for years. This is something that suddenly moved from the labs to a main stage conversation in every company across the world. So just to define things, and we'll jump past these quickly and kind of get into content, but it is an interesting space where it's moving from consumer to the enterprise and back. We're seeing 2D and 3D and immersive experiences blend seamlessly back and forth across the board. From cloud, AI, blockchain, and edge are all powering this movement. In 2013, we made a really bold statement that was unexpected by many of our clients. We said every business will be a digital business. We got laughed at in many industries and many sectors. Very shortly afterwards, they realized they needed a digital footprint. This is the next digital. Right, this is the next phase of who am I going to be in this next wave? And there was a pivot to digital and there was a pivot to metaverse. What does it mean to embrace the metaverse as part of your business? And I am shocked by the industries that you see. It's not just the brands and the consumer-facing products and such that you would expect, but I actually see oil and gas customers leaning in. I see people across every industry, across every sector really taking advantage, kind of the ingredients of this. So I think Royal already did a great description, but ours is similar, right? The evolution in the internet that lets us move past browsing to participating in inhabiting and persistent shared experiences that span the spectrum of the world, fully virtual and in between, right? So we're engaging in this entire continuum, and we call it a continuum on purpose because you don't know what the end state's gonna look like. We're getting there through a wave of how are we embracing this motion and this movement. But it's interesting to say if you mark, right, the internet of data, the internet of people, the internet of things, there's a new moment that's not just immersive collaborative experiences, which is why we're talking about ledgers and things, right? We break it out into two simple areas of the internet of place. How can I go and see a persistent shared experience in places, in new virtual worlds, new virtual experiences, where we can collaborate immersively together, but also the internet of ownership, right? So our team in a bit of foresight, a couple of years ago, actually brought our XR and blockchain teams together to say, what could we do interestingly with both of these technologies to transform a company? The internet of ownership is coming from the crypto movement, from the NFT movement, from unique, portable, persistent digital goods. And I loved Sam's descriptions of identity and verifiable credentials, and we'll talk about that and the role in which they have in that. But the idea, there's now an expectation from consumers that I can buy something and have value and prove its ownership and have a secondary market created in the same motion. That has never been true before, right? So if I bought a collectible in the past, I bought a Beanie Baby, I had to go to eBay to go resell the Beanie Baby as these trends happened. And there is a point in time between buying a luxury good, a collectible good, and then being able to resell that good and prove that ownership. And so we'll kind of talk and explore a little bit why the internet of ownership will make the metaverse and these immersive experiences even more meaningful and valuable and give it that features and functions that we expect of a full brand. Nothing is left untouched. As we think about where the metaverse will hit, when you put these two things together, immersive collaborative experiences and digital ownership of goods, customer experiences change. How they engage with any digital goods has completely been transformed. The products you make change. We have a Accenture nth floor. We bought 60,000 headsets. We put over 120,000 people through our what we call the Accenture nth floor, which includes one Accenture Park. So during onboarding, you're not just, during the pandemic, you're not just shipped your laptop in a box and saying, welcome to Accenture. We had to build brand, we had to build community. We're 700,000 people, which is a huge company. How do you bring brand and community together in the middle of a pandemic? Well, we sent them headsets. We brought them to a virtual space. Everyone went through the same experience. And then we enabled a group of game changers who actually went off and were enabled to go create their own worlds. So they made their own space. They customized it for a networking, Friday night happy hours and things. And so we've done this at scale. And what we found is that they want digital goods in these worlds, right? So you come here, you get your swag. Now our employees want swag for their local office events in the digital space. So how do you bring swag into this environment and bring it throughout, right? You end up with digital first products. And those digital first products are really good when you're in the space you're using that product, but how do you continue that portability and ownership as you go between? Payments have been transformed across the board. They continue to transform employee experiences. Immersive learning has been around for a while, right? For anyone who's deployed headsets, we've had immersive learning where you could do singular practice, learn for all the, I like to think of the AI, dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs, right? Most of those are good to, teach someone in a headset the dangerous jobs, right? So they can practice. The surgeons who are able to practice with, precision and such. The entire employee experience starts to change from both collaboration of the tools we have today to then the learning experiences in the future. How you make your products, digital twins of spaces have been around, right? Industry X.0 has been talking about digital twins, but how do you take a digital twin of a factory, walk around it, and understand and collaborate at the same time? We're seeing a convergence, right, of this collaboration capability and the tech and the data that's streaming from the IoT devices in the field. And I'd like to be able to get to a digital twin of something that's not just I can walk around and go, that's a cool design of a factory, but then to see the data in action, simulate and run simulations and see what will happen and change, and then start to act on it, right? I want to hit the go button on the factory floor from the other side of the world and have it change what happens in the real life. Supply chains, entire value chains are coming together. We have a supply chain demo, which is a control tower that you can bring in all of your control tower data across your whole value chain into this immersive experience and collaborate around. There was a disruption in the supply chain between the vendors and the distributors and the final retailers. How are we going to decide what to do? People have been building control towers for a long time. That's a data problem. But the idea that you can hop into a collaborative space, not on a call, the screens suddenly become 25 feet tall. Right? And you can actually run simulations and collaborate around it and make decisions together in some interesting ways. And we have an intent to actually manage our enterprise in the metaverse someday. to move from the boardroom to the local office to the centers around the world and meet our people, talk about data and context. How is our business performing as a whole? But all of this needs lots of ingredients. We need community, we need place, we need culture, we need ownership and virtual value and products and currencies and brand marketing and influence. There are ingredients to the metaverse that are coming together to kind of create a really interesting moment in time. As we think about enabling transactions, why is the metaverse good at this? It's an interesting thing. We need to be able to engage with customers, and I'm a customer as, when I'm shopping for something, but I'm also an employee and I'm the same person, right? I need to engage with my company, other companies, other brands authentically and create these two-way relationships. So that reputation score that Sam talked about earlier, right? Being able to bring that into different engagement and different models starts to add this cumulative amount of ingredients that come together to drive new kinds of value for your customers. When we talk to brands, and I'm a technologist forever, I live in the world of emerging tech, and I like to figure out how you can do things with new companies. And I understand the entire back office of a company, just given the roles of all the different things I've done in back office. But learning how to talk CMOs and the chief marketing officer is a whole other group of language that I've learned over the last just year or two in this space. Creating value for a consumer has to be authentic, but then there's new kinds of value you can create. I love the story of when, so on Fifth Avenue in New York City, they're selling a luxury handbag, limited edition. Everybody wants to create a limited edition to up the value of a product, right? But they offered an NFT along with it that had a utility token to turn it in for an event. Those sold out so fast, faster than any other physical brand product launch, because it came with a tokenized value, digital copy of the good, as well as a utility that could be turned into another good. So this mix of I sold more physical goods because I bundled it with a digital good, and the digital good had value and it could be exchanged for value somewhere else, changes the way we think about the metaverse, right? Because I said 2D to 3D and you all kind of smiled, right? But had you really thought about how you're going to mix 2D and 3D together, other than you're standing in front of maybe a twin and you're augmenting some data over it? These mix of physical and digital products are creating just this entirely new ecosystem, an entirely new economy. Now that digital good that was sold with the handbag now also has a resale market, right? So there's never been, I don't think, a point in time where you bought something and were encouraged to make the brand worth more for your own personal gain, unless you were an influencer and went to an outside party to kind of be to be paid for it, right? So this idea that you can sell a digital good and it immediately has a secondary market, I am incented just naturally by making that product worth more so that it holds value. So when I go to resell it, it's worth something. This is all enabled by distributed systems, right, that are allowing us to engage in transactions in entirely new ways. So when you have a digital first product and a digital way to resell that product and prove that I have ownership of it when I resell it, you've completely rethought your engagement model. And so brands are stepping in because money is changing hands. And what's really interesting when we talk about openness is that the ecosystem didn't need to prove to be responsible, scalable, and smart for people to buy stuff and make some money for themselves, right? I have heard aunts and uncles and friends randomly saying, tell me about this NFT or this digital product or this thing. It's I don't know if that one's any better than that one, and is there real value for it? But they're now engaging in your brand or in your product in such a different way that it's creating a whole new value economy. And you kind of can't undo that. That's now consumer behavior and expectation. As more people make money off of something they own, they want to go, well, if I buy your brand of something, what's in it for me, right? Other than the actual goods you get, right? Your shoe with your copies or your bag or your example. And so brands need to be open about this and also enable the kind of broader ecosystem of the economy as they come together. So it's really these three trends that are converging together, right? We talked about immersive collaborative experiences. Improvements in hardware and bandwidth are scaling these solutions across the board. And then the tokenization of everything. I like to just simply say, right, we are tokenize everything. We have NFTs, we have FTs, right, fungible tokens, but things that are creating real utility of value. And as those three converge, we need to be able to take our money, identity, and objects from place to place to place. We can do that today. I think we just heard the examples, right? You pull out your wallet and you can bring your wallet from one place. It has your money in it, it has your identity in it. Maybe it has a loyalty card or something, but you've got to be able to take it from place to place to place to really have the features and functions of a metaverse that is more than a game, right? Because in a gaming environment, there's a fully closed ecosystem in which you earn and burn your value in that entire ecosystem. To be able to move it from and create that, I loved your example, Royal, of like not have to leave and go back to Google to go to the next place. To be able to go from place to place, we need portability, we need that consistency, we need verifiable credentials embedded in the midst of this. We need digital currencies that have proven transfer of ownership as we go between each place. It also means we need to understand the rules of each place, right? Because as we go from place to place, those standards need to be created. Just reinforcing what was said this morning, those standards need to be created so that I can understand what are the cultural norms in each different place I visit, right? My avatar in Microsoft Altspace or Mesh probably looks a lot like me because I'm showing up professionally as if I would a Teams meeting. Might be a little different than the purple dinosaur that I want to show up at in another environment. But being able to still verify that Melanie is Melanie, or what pieces of Melanie want to be shared in that environment is even more important. So as you get to these partial credentials where you can share a piece of information about me, this should drive the end of the cookie wars, which is huge. The cookie wars are the winning digital business amasses the most amount of information about everyone, everywhere, and then sells it, right? How do they make money off of those products? When you can start to take the tokenization of everything, including the actual ownership of your own data into the metaverse, you can start to transform the way you think about what do I want to share with this company? Maybe I want to share more information here because it's beholden to me that I get a better experience, or I want to share less information in the purple dinosaur land, right, about me and my actual personal profile. And so when we flip the model and we start to say, I hold my wallet and I give you rights and obligations to use that information, all powered by these distributed systems, and I can say for how long, right? Maybe you can have my data today and not tomorrow. And I can actually have that smart contract-based language that actually knows I can feel confident that the data is being used according to the rights that I give them along the way. So to be able to take my money, identity, and objects from place to place to place sounds really simple, but is why we're all here together. Because how do we create open source movements and projects? And that was a great call out to Aries earlier, but that actually create value in this. Otherwise, we're creating experiences that are just, there's an app for that, right? Like, how do we create an ecosystem of community development, of apps that engage with each other, that have standards, and then not just follow a happy path, but also follow a recourse path, which changes the way we think about governance across the board. We see a lot of early innovation that is just happy path innovation, right? I think there's a lot of digital goods you can go and purchase right now, and if something goes wrong, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, there's no recourse, there's no phone number to call. There's truly decentralized and less governed networks that are growing up and figuring out how to exchange value at a more scale. So all these trends, as they converging, it's because there's a growing blockchain ecosystem, right? People, it's much more common to have a crypto wallet these days. I think it says 81 million people as of February. If y'all saw the Coinbase bouncing ad to go in the Super Bowl this year, there was actually an Accenture program, but the amount of, it was such a successful ad that you could interact with during the Super Bowl and catch the little bouncing ad, and then it logged you into Coinbase. We broke the Coinbase servers because there was so much excitement and energy around it. It is becoming much more popular everywhere, but we're also seeing emerging regulation. I've been in the blockchain space since 2015, and people have been trying to figure out how do we, when, where, and how much regulation is the right regulation of which digital goods. So if I've got a digital good that's a branded t-shirt in my virtual world, that probably needs less governing than when I have a digital good that represents a piece of digital art that is, high value, high dollar amount. And just mimicking some of the regulations that exist today. Tokenization of money, over 90 countries in the world are working on a central bank digital currency. The idea that this tokenization of everything can get rid of the reconciliation mess that's behind the scenes today, that most of us have no idea how expensive it is to move money from one bank to another bank. That it takes days to move money from one bank to another bank. There is no direct way. It takes 2 days to move money from me to you. It has to go from my bank and it net and settles and move to the other side. There's so much complexity behind it. This technology was really what drove much of this, was the simplification of all of that. But it's now powering these experiences to speed of transaction finality, actual security of ownership, and solving the double spend problem we've had forever, is what's creating value to these new levels of engagements and infrastructure. The rising need of self-sovereign identity, for those of you who are already sitting in the room, you just did that whole bullet for us, of verifiable credentials, being able to understand who you're talking to. There's the emotional human side of I'm an avatar, and who do you know if you're really me, or did my 12-year-old kid just pick up my headset and engage with you differently? But then there's also the important factor that businesses have to know who they're doing business with. KYC is know your customer, and AML is anti-money laundering, and it is an important piece of business transactions, is you need to know who you're doing business with at any given time. And so being able to bring that into these digital environments and get more confidence means you can do higher value, more scaled transactions in these environments. All together with this evolution of 3D commerce, people wanting to buy and purchase in new ways, money changing hands, and all of the metaverse use cases that power it together drive this need to have a combination of not just immersive experiences, but brought together with ledgers that will actually drive value exchange at a much more confident level, or kind of hitting that phasing. All of this has to be done responsibly. And this is just a pretty picture, but it comes across two dimensions, as trust and human dimensions. When we launched our business group for the metaverse, we said from the very beginning, we have the moment to think about the metaverse and do it responsibly. So you've heard about some of these things already today, but privacy, resilience, and security by design, but also the human dimensions of how do I take maybe a reputation score or something and understand how people are behaving in an environment, right? So if I'm at a concert, I'm around lots of people, I have to find a police officer to engage right in real life and say something inappropriate happened. How am I gonna moderate 100,000 people in a virtual world, right? So how am I gonna hit the report bad abusive content? We do that on text-based, image-based solutions all the time, but how do you rethink that in the metaverse? In an immersive world requires data sharing. It requires kind of the underpinning of all these technologies. And building it then that we can create the right safety and environment, the right moderation and inclusiveness as we go. So responsible by design, I would be just sad to talk at any time about the metaverse without talking about how important it is to be responsible by design. But it's interesting because everyone has a role here. This is a place for creators to have an opportunity to share in that ownership. So as you're in a distributed system where we're creating lots of content and engaging, there's a value exchange that's happening across the board. It's a center for community where people are coming back and talking to each other and engaging around interesting content. But it also then drives that engine for commerce. And it is early days, but what we see is the commitment to figuring out what you're gonna do to respond to the metaverse. So I had, being in blockchain, most people would stare at us like, I need a PhD to understand you. I don't understand. We hadn't abstracted away this stuff for so long. The buying process, the decision for companies to get started was really long. They had to educate, then they had to educate more leaders. They had to make decisions. They had to pull apart budget. They had to make sure they can validate the business case. They had to prove the business case. In this motion, we see something completely different. This is dollars are changing hands between consumers, and my brand's not there, I better hurry up. right? There is a value-driven moment here that is driving kind of a different set of incentives. So people are testing and learning because you got to figure out what's going to respond and who's going to react well. And so we're still moving in those chunks, but the desire to get these systems to work at scale, if the systems worked at scale, people would be there. And that's what's interesting. Like, it's not if you build it, they will come. Like, hurry up, people, build this stuff. Because our clients want to have ways to engage with consumers differently. They want to engage with their employees differently. They want to collaborate differently. They want to offer an alternative of a hybrid workforce. They want to offer these different mixes. And so the open source community, I just think, is so important because when we start a project, you really want to have to go build every library and utility possible so you can actually do the cool, shiny object that's going to excite the people who approve the budget. We are used to having utilities that allow us to kind of accelerate adoption of these products and services. So I just think the more and more we can do as a community in open source can contribute the basics so that we can really focus on those value drivers at the end of the day that help kind of bring a business case to life. The ecosystem's complex and it's growing. We have hundreds of partners in our landscape. The vendors are changing every day. We keep saying we're gonna pause and just focus on the partners we have, and then we have urgent new ones every single day, and I'm sure I will get more as we meet more people here. But the ecosystem is complex, and so just that need for engagement, having conversations, just figuring out where can we do goodness together. No one company should win the metaverse. Right, this isn't a war. Like, there was no one blockchain to win all blockchains. We don't. This is a future of how we engage with each other. This is the future of how we interact. And so it's going to take that partnership. We're seeing lots of people partnering with other people. Accenture even helped at Meta Connect this week. Meta, Microsoft, and Accenture announced a partnership on it. And for Meta and Microsoft to partner on how we can get enterprise Azure Active Directory integration into a Oculus headset is a huge thing, right? Because they're typically competing in these spaces, but they're integrating, they're thinking about how do we do this together, how do we create a set of standards so that the overall ecosystem can thrive. And so I think what I'm seeing as we're talking to vendors all the time is a desire to do the right thing, not just to win. And I think that's really interesting, right? Because if we knew what we knew about building the internet, as I was, an early internet adopter, probably too young and too many AOL chat rooms, and then exposed to all kinds of funny things. But it's interesting the knowledge that the community has now, and how people have a desire to do the right thing. And I think we're actually seeing collaborative value creation happening too. Because I think if one company tries to hoard all the knowledge for the metaverse and just win, it's not gonna work. We need to create engagement models where people are actually verifying the entire industry as a whole, and then it allows everyone to thrive, right? If I didn't know I needed digital goods, I wouldn't go shopping for the best digital good that I want, right? So I am seeing people celebrating successes of other brands as well, that are driving up the demand for this at a crazy fast rate. So really, I think that's the summary of how commerce is changing in this space. I just always encourage people to think big and start small and scale really, really fast because people are ready to engage. And so now it's a hurry up and get there kind of moment. So thank you, everyone.